Well, I believe that in order to love other people, it starts with the journey within yourself. You can't really give the proper and right kinds of love to people unless you love yourself first. And that can take a lifetime, centuries, months, however long to figure out. But having the confidence within yourself and being able to have a generous spirit and unconditionality within yourself is really important. And I also think that being able to give those things to yourself is where it starts.
Welcome to the GRACED podcast, a space for everyday magic for your everyday life. We do this through rituals, aligning yourself to your soul's purpose, and creating alchemy to heal our mind, body, and spirits so that you can bring in more love and joy, manifest your desires, and believe in your dreams. Listen and watch over at graceduong.com/podcast and on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, and all the places you can find me on social media. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the GRACED podcast, where we talk about how we can infuse everyday magic into your everyday life through tarot, rituals, wellness, and today, astrology and love. Today's guest is Lisa Stardust, a New York City-based astrologer who is also the resident astrologer on the Today Show. She is also the best-selling author of books and decks alike. And today, we get to have a special collective reading from her Love deck. Lisa and I talk about the themes of the Lover's card, which is all about love, relationships, but also one's relationship with self, the choices we make in alignment with our value system, and how we can practice more unconditional love in our own lives. To celebrate this episode, Lisa and I are doing a giveaway of her Love deck, which is filled with 70 cards to ignite attraction, passion, and romance. To enter the giveaway, leave a podcast review and follow us on social media. Full rules to enter will be in the show notes. Now let's dive in to this episode. Hello, Lisa, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a huge fan of your tarot deck, and so are all the members of my extended family and friends. We love the Mystic Mondays deck and the art and everything. Yes, it's fabulous.
Yeah, and I think that's how we got connected too. Like, I remember we did a trade or something. You did a reading for me and I did a reading for you. And actually, I do remember you focusing on love during that reading.
I mean, I have a Libra rising. My Venus is retrograde, and my Venus is in Cancer. I'm born under a full moon. I'm all about love, and I'm also a Gemini, which is the Lover's card, which we're going to get into in a hot minute. But I always say Geminis are the ride or die signs of the zodiac. We are the only signs that have our bestie along with us for the ride. So I'm always looking at life through relationships, and as a Libra rising, I do my best to make all my relationships work whenever I can.
Yeah, and I'm a Gemini rising, so that definitely resonates in terms of like how I'm relating to others. And I find that the Lover's card in tarot is also about choice and self-love, because we're often making choices in alignment with who we are. And sometimes that might not fall in line with who we are in relationship with. And so I was wondering, how can one make the best choices for themselves as they evolve on their journey? And what is the definition of love even?
Well, I believe that in order to love other people, it starts with the journey within yourself. So you can't really give the proper and right kinds of love to people unless you love yourself first. And that can take a lifetime, centuries, months, however long to figure out. But having the confidence within yourself and being able to have a generous spirit and unconditionality within yourself is really important. And I also think that being able to give those things to yourself is where it starts. So I always say to people, every day is a journey. We do our best to get through the day. I set my days off with an intention and I manifest, and I also meditate twice a day just to make sure that I'm giving myself that time. And I think that self-care in terms of self-love is really important. And it could be, even if it's like treating yourself to an expensive latte or getting a manicure or pedicure or just taking time to unwind and rest. That's really important. Now, when it comes to loving others, I always think that as long as you come from a pure place and you clean yourself up with a pure heart and you have good intentions and you care for people and they mutually respect your needs and they give to you what you're giving to them, reciprocation is key. I think that that's love, but I also have a Libra rising, so I always come from like the standpoint of it's a two-way street. So an example would be my mom is not really good at organizing her bills, right? And I hate doing errands, right? Mundane stuff. So I'll organize her bills. I'll take care of like all the phone calls and she'll pick up my dry cleaning for me, go to the store, do this, do that, do laundry for me, and I think that even that reciprocal relationship is a testimony because we do things for those that we love. And for me, my love language is acts of service, and we all have a love language that we relate to. So funny enough, my mom's is gift. So she's like, I'm not going to pick up your laundry unless you you do this for me and but we all have our different love language. And I think that understanding what yours is can really help you identify how you want to love others and how others love you.
Yeah, there's so many juicy things that you dived into already. But since we're talking about the love languages, I know that mine is also acts of service and words of affirmation. And so I believe another one is touch, gifts, and what was the other one?
Time, quality time.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering, with these love languages, like how can one discover what theirs is, but also how can they discover what another person's is? Because not everyone's love language is the same as receiving. So for example, I think one of my ways of expressing gratitude for someone else is to give gifts, but it's not necessarily my way of receiving love to the fullest extent of what I prefer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a gift giver, but I also give gifts because I like the act of picking out gifts too. That's part of the love language. That it's meaningful. It means something special. I will search high and low to get my mother the specific peony color that she likes for Mother's Day, because peonies are her favorite flowers, but there are so many different colors. So I will search high and low to get my best friend the necklace that she wanted 10 years ago. Meaningful things. And I think that there's something into that, and also giving up my time to help people as well. Do you have a Virgo stellium? So I love helping people. Virgos love to help, love to give, and I have a lot of patience, believe it or not, until I don't. But I'm just like, I like the smile on people's faces. It makes me feel happy to kind of make people happy. And you're an air sign too, so you get it.
Yeah, Gemini rising, Aries sun, Pisces moon. So lots of good elements there. But I actually have a Capricorn and Aquarius stellium.
That's what I meant. You have an Aquarius. So I remember it was a lot of Aquarius and Capricorn in your chart because I was like, Grace is a go-getter. He makes things happen.
Can't help myself. Yeah. So I know you mentioned reciprocity, and that's something in relationships that I feel like is really important. And with Gemini being represented in the Lover's Tarot card, and there's just this element of two, this giving and receiving. And I'm wondering, sometimes there can be an extent of loving to an extent of sacrificing yourself, because even you mentioned something along the lines of giving up your time. And I'm wondering if there is a type of love that exists without sacrifice and a way of generating for oneself.
Well, I'm going to relate this. I'm going to say how I feel when I'm going to talk about the lovers. But I do think that for me, when I give my time to a friend who's in need, there's a mutual understanding that when I'm in need, they're going to give back to me. Does that make sense? So we all have different problems at different times in our lives. But if someone can down the road have my back or defend me or take my side or do anything meaningful or even listen to me when I'm crying, that means a lot to me. Or when I'm stressed or when I'm having a bad day. So I think that there is like this sort of mutual agreement that you sign when you're friends with people or when you're in a relationship with people and you're really close and tight that you'll do for each other, even colleagues as well. Like you do for me, I do for you, I'll help you out. If you're trying to like launch something, like I have no problem helping you advertise it on my social media or get press, like in an article I'm working on. And I think that's something that we all have to work together with because I think that a lot of people don't do that. There is something to that, helping people out and unifying and building a community and kind of aligning. And I think that's something really nice to do. And I would do that for anyone, but some people don't like to promote other people. And I feel we all have the same goals to make astrology and tarot, like put that magic into the world. So why not help everyone? When it comes to the Lover's card, funny enough, I always pull the Lover's card when it comes to my relationships and when I'm starting to DTR, define the relationship, because my mercurial mind is always at a crossroads. How do I want to pursue this? So when I pull the Lover's card for me, it's always, like you said, been a moment of choice, crossroads, time to see where things are going. And it's interesting enough because I've always seen that the Lover's card, that it's Adam and Eve, correct, in the traditional deck. And it's the Garden of Eden. So it's about temptation. Are you going to take the high road or the good road? Are you going to cheat on your partner or not? I've also seen that in a lot of tarot questions about cheating as well.
Ooh. Yeah. You know, when I pull the Lover's card for someone else, I always think about the relationship with self. And I suppose in some ways, the reflection of if you decide to cheat on your partner, for example, it all comes down to your value systems, which is also what the Lover's tarot card is about, and aligning yourself to make the choices that align with your personal integrity, your personal system. And so I think that speaks to the choices that people make when you kind of have this devil over your shoulder and you make that choice of cheating on somebody. I suppose then that relationship wasn't aligned in the first place and you're making that choice to go that other route.
Yeah, I mean, tarot and astrology is all about interpretation, and being a tarot reader for many, many, many years, that you're painting a story based on the cards that you're pulling. And it's sort of like there's a blank canvas and you're painting with the paintbrush based on all of the other cards that you're pulling. So if you're pulling the Lovers and you're pulling the High Priestess and maybe Seven of Swords or the Devil all up in there, it's like run, run, run. So I think it depends on everything that's clarifying it and impacting it. But for me personally, I've always definitely seen the Lovers as a card where I'm unsure about the person and I need to make a decision if I want to stay or go before things get too deep. Because when I pulled it reversed, it usually means that a decision's been made or a commitment's been decided or discussed.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you mentioned the Devil because the Lovers, the traditional Rider-Waite Lovers card and the Devil card have a lot of similarities in having like two figures, typically both male and female. And in the Devil card, the Devil's in the center, as well as I believe it's the Tree of Life in the traditional Lovers card. And so there are a lot of similarities in painting that narrative in the temptation of love and the choices that we can make, whether it's quote unquote good or bad. But it just displays, I think, the spectrum of human emotion and how that can drive our human decisions that we can speak to in the name of love, but can also speak to human desire, right? And human lust. And we can say it's love, but that's why I asked, like, what is love really?
even in the Lovers card, I want to say, and the Devil card, there is this dualistic nature. And the thing that's interesting about the Devil card, which I always remembered because my great-grandmother used to read tarot, is that there is a key in the corner of the card in the Rider-Waite deck. So don't forget, you can unchain yourself whenever you want. You just don't want to with the Devil. So I always think that there's this dualistic nature to the Devil card where you're with a person, but you don't have to be, and you don't probably want to be, but you're not doing anything to get out of the situation. Now, with the Lovers, I think the dualistic flexibility is that, don't forget, Eve took the bite of that apple, even though she was with Adam, and she was told not to. She was tempted. So I think that the dualistic nature of the Lovers is that, not saying there's a third party, but the situation to do that is there. Or if there's a different situationship that's forming, not what you had thought. So I always think that the Lovers card has this sort of interesting flavor to it in the sense that we're connected to, I think, our spirituality, but and also the physical world. So it's sort of physical versus the material world versus the spiritual world that we're a part of.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that tarot is dualistic, because I think tarot as a system with upright and reversed meanings, and you often see complementary matches within the cards, but even with the cards themselves, something with the Lovers is we're seeing, I think, fractals of our own relationship with self through relating to others. So relating to your partner, you could also relate that to, let's say, the relationship that you had with your mother or father, and how you treat yourself, I think, is often how that reflects outward into how you treat other people. And so I think that for me, the Lovers is so much about your relationship to self, and how can you, if you have the key, how can you reframe the relationship that you have with yourself? And I'm sure as an astrologer, you get love questions all the time. And so I think is a lot about the relationship, what you're saying to yourself, the script that you have for your own love relationship, how you relate to love as, let's say, an entity or a being. Let's say love is an external being, kind of like how people say money is this entity. I think we can also relate to love being like an entity as well. But oftentimes, I think we tend to look externally for that validation from somebody else, when a lot of times we can learn to give it to ourselves, fill ourselves up, and then approach relationships in a way that can feel a bit more whole, so that we're not looking for those outside things from someone else.
I mean, it's interesting because first thing that came to mind when you were talking is the notion of truthfulness. So when we're speaking to ourselves and to our others, I think the most important thing is to be truthful and to be honest with ourselves about things. What is our capacity right now to love? Can we do this? I always say to people, the infamous sign is sometimes people can't be in relationships because they're dealing with a lot of stuff, right? And I get that. And I can see that in your birth chart. Someone's like, I can't be in a relationship. It's they really can't. But sometimes people, even if they have a lot going on, they can be in a relationship, but the quality of love they can give to other people isn't great because they're dealing with a lot of things as well behind the scenes. Now, the other thing that came to my mind too, when we're talking about dualistic things and relationships, is there's always that sentiment about what goes on behind closed doors versus what's seen in public. So there's that notion where someone could be complaining all the time about their partner, but really love them. Maybe that's their love language, I don't know. But I think that for me, I'm really hard on the people that I love the most. And I want them to be the best version of themselves. So I push people. Like Tina Fey said in Mean Girls, I'm a pusher. I am a pusher. And I think that if you care about someone, you want them to achieve the most that they can. I think that there are different ways we support each other. And I think if you really love someone deeply, you want them to succeed. And I think that sometimes it's great to be selfish, and you should always make sure your cup is full first before you can give to other people. But it's also okay to let others have the win sometimes. if that's what they need. Because that's what I mean by being unconditional in love, is that I don't need to win an argument with someone to know I'm right. Like, I've learned that in my life. I have a Sag moon. This is very hard for me to do, okay? I'm born Gemini Sun, Sag moon, Virgo stellium. Like, to not confront people and to let them have the win and to let them think they're right has always been a challenge for me. And I've worked on that a lot over the past years. And because I don't want to escalate things, because there are people I care about and I don't want to fight over something minimal. And I think that having a big heart is just also having boundaries with people and knowing limits, and to just know when, even limits and boundaries with yourself too.
Yeah. And the capacity to give and to receive, I think, just understanding how one works. I think that's really interesting that there can be times when there are times when you are giving more and there are times when you're receiving more. And I think when it comes to relationships and love, it's kind of hard when you're tallying up the score. And I
never tally.
Well, yeah. So I think you don't, but I think a lot of people tend to. And so
I used to, yeah.
Yeah, and it can be hard. And so I think that lends itself to this idea of unconditional love and being able to give love and receive love without necessarily gaining it. I think, that's actually a theme that's come up lately for me, is embodying this unconditional love in every cell of my body. And I think that's something to work through for anyone. But for me, it's very much tied to this sense of worthiness and also being able to be claimed for love. And I think often, and for me, it's about seeing yourself in a loving way that can attract more love into your life. And so I'm sure people are always asking you as an astrologer, like, how can I bring in more love into my life? And I'm wondering what you tell them.
Well, I think the most important thing is to work with the planet Venus, because Venus represents love and confidence and beauty and abundance. So for me, I was born during a Venus retrograde, unfortunately in Cancer. So I go through relationships backwards. So I commit after knowing someone, but I'm like, oh, I don't like this person. How do I get out of this after a month? I think the most important thing is to really, whether you're working with an Orisha, whether you're working with another deity, or whether you're working with Venus, I think the most important thing here is to basically really journal. I always say journaling is really healthy to find out what you're kind of looking for. I've manifested people before that have come my way. I've left out a lot of other things, so be really careful what you wish for, because sometimes the universe can bring someone to you, which they have other problems, and But I think it's more about when you're ready. And I think that everyone wants love. We all want to be connected. There's nothing more beautiful than sharing our souls and our hearts and our lives with someone. But I think it depends when your chart is plump and right for it. And a lot of the times there are so many things that we look for when it comes to love in astrology. But the classic signifiers are looking at a progressed chart and seeing if the progressed sun or the progressed Venus align with the natal Venus or natal moon, because that really means that the timing's right. The eclipse is coming to your Venus, the nodes coming to your Venus, Jupiter coming to your Venus, even Pluto coming to your Venus can mean love. So we look for any aspect to Venus. Personally, I like the hard aspects because it means something is definitely happening and permeating there and coming to fruition. Some people like the soft aspects because love is a dream. It's beautiful. It's easy. It really depends what you're looking for. Now, when it comes to synastry and compatibility, I think that I'm one of the many astrologers nowadays who's kind of looking past that. I mean, obviously, there are classic signifiers that would denote long-term compatibility and not so much, but I think that I've seen the people who have the worst compatibility stay together the longest, because now with modern psychology, we're always trying to work through problems, right? To understand people. So people that have hard aspects, they want to understand the other person, and that can create a bond within itself and a commitment too. So love trumps astrology. A Scorpio and an Aquarius can find love very easily. I've seen it happen. A Taurus and a Leo can fall in love. A Gemini and a Pisces can make it work. I think that it's all about what you're willing to put into it, which would be the Lover's card as well. Because once again, here we're choosing to commit. We're choosing to find someone to share our lives with, even if they are the opposite of us. And that could be like the dualistic nature. Yes, it's hard, but it's also rewarding in other ways.
Yeah. And I find that when you do come across someone who's different from you and has a different perspective, it can also help you grow when you approach it from a place of understanding and compassion versus just wanting to call it quits. I'm sure there's other things at play like attraction, chemistry, all of that stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that it's easy. I think that for me, because I am a mercurial person, and for me, attraction is more about intellectualism. So for me, I'm attracted to people's minds. So I think that if someone's really talented, creatively talented or artistic, I'm like attracted to like what they have to offer. I'm not really, it's just how air signs roll, I guess. Like we're always kind of looking towards what someone has to offer in sense of like comfort rather than like passion. You're a fire sign, you're an Aries, so you're looking for passion.
Well, I actually feel like I resonate with what you said because my chart ruler is Mercury and my Venus is an Aquarius. So I actually find the intellect really attractive. And I think that's something I notice first.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we all have our things that we're into, and I think some signs they look for if someone's cute, and that's fine too. Because I think that once you get to know the person, you can decide how you feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all plays a factor, like attraction, like if you're attracted to the person, intellect, if the minds are melding well, but also I think emotional capacity, because some people might not have the same ability to be there for you emotionally. And so I think there's like a lot of levels to like the initial attraction, the initial things that you find attractive about each other. But also I think that's different from being able to sustain a relationship over time. And something that you mentioned, which is I think just that understanding and the willingness to grow together can be a big factor in whether the relationship lasts or not.
Yeah. I mean, Aries jump into relationships, but also the rest of your chart likes to take it slow. So you're the type of person where you look at someone and you're like, okay, I like them, I'm in it. But then you're like, wait a second, like I need to slow myself down and get to know them. I want to like formally understand if this is someone worth investing my time in. Because I think for you, it's more about like an investment of time, relationships and energy and love, right? So for me, it's just like, can I have a conversation with this person? Can I see Indiana Jones with this person and have like an intellectual conversation after the movies while getting coffee about the movie with them? Have they read Foucault? Do they understand philosophy? So it's just, are they down to go on a road trip on a whim? So I think that we all look for things in our ideal person, but sometimes we're not going to find all of them. And sometimes we really just have to like have other relationships, like friendships that fulfill other parts of our personality and passions.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think also the added factor of just the uprising and wanting to understand through psychology and just kind of get each other on a level of just making it work. And also, I think there are just more resources for people to understand each other, astrology being one of them.
Tarot too. I mean, actually, I learned from my therapist that astrology and tarot and everything that runes, everything that we love to do, I love to do, you love to do, Basically, I always tell people that the thing here about that is that it's just helping us understand the world from a different perspective. So it's allowing us to take an outside step and to view ourselves from sort of like who we are and what our purpose is and how we go through relationships and how we understand ourselves and identify. So, I mean, astrology and tarot has changed my life in so many ways, and not just from even helping me cope with anxiety, but also allowing me to understand relationships and how I can be a better sister, a better daughter, a better friend, a better lover, be supportive of people. and what I shouldn't do, like be a know-it-all with my Sag moon and fight over little facts when it doesn't matter.
Right. Want to learn more about the Lover's Tarot card? A full description of the Lover's card is available on the Mystic Mondays blog. Check it out on mysticmondays.com. If you want to go deeper into your tarot journey, I highly recommend the Mystic Mondays Tarot course, which is getting a full makeover this year. So not only will you have access to the legacy program, but also the full upgrades of everything new. More details about the upgrades and this tarot course are at tarotcourse.mysticmondays.com. Yeah. So what are some indicators in astrology that love is a prime theme in your life?
You would probably look to see what Venus and the moon are doing individually. So for me, my moon, I'm born on a full moon, and my moon conjuncts Neptune. So obviously I have like a soft heart. Well, I know people are taking advantage of me, and I'm like, okay, sometimes certain situations, like I'm unconditional, I'm forgiving. Full moon people, they're relationship oriented people, because there's a story here about the way they were raised, like of the relationship that their parents had. Usually there's some disconnect between the parents or a divorce that happens that makes them full moon people really want to work on relationships and try to figure it out. Other indications for love, I always like a good Venus conjunct the North Node is a good one. Venus conjunct the South Node means that you tend to get stuck in a lot of relationships. So even if you're unhappy, it's hard to get out of it. Or you can be a little bit lovesick. I like a good Venus conjunct Jupiter because Jupiter is all about expansion. Venus conjunct the moon means that you have a lot of love to give. Venus conjunct the sun means that you love. And Venus conjunct Neptune means that like your love is like a big part of your life because you're unconditional to a fault. Any planet really conjunct Venus and the moon is what I'm trying to say. Even the bad ones, like Venus conjunct Pluto, not that Pluto's a bad planet, but Venus conjunct Pluto can mean that you're really passionate and you're really intense when it comes to love.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing.
Yeah. You know, I think even if it's a more challenging aspect, there's always something to learn about yourself, which could be the Venus conjunct Pluto. I had Venus conjunct North Node.
Yeah, so that means that something that's really important in your lifetime is relationships and money, partnerships. I would say based on your chart with all of the Capricorn and Aquarius and Venus conjunct the North Node, like love is a big deal and relationships are a big deal, but how much time are you willing to invest in things that aren't giving you a big payback? So it's more about time is money, like time is love. And also, more or less, I would say, what sign is your Venus in?
Aquarius, but Venus is also conjunct my Mars.
Oh, so Venus conjunct your Mars on the North Node means that you are someone who is always looking to understand themselves in relationships. Venus conjunct Mars means that you can fulfill yourself in love. So self-love is something that you must master before you connect with someone else. And also, when you connect with someone else, I would say the other most important thing here is that you have to sacrifice a little bit because you have a high list of demands or can put your needs first when it comes to relationships. So it's like, you want to see the Indiana Jones movie, they want to see the Barbie movie. Like, okay, let's see the Barbie movie. Let's, this one's because it will make you happy. But I get to choose where I want to have dinner. So I think it's about compromise also.
I definitely resonate with the self-love, and I feel like I've been on that journey for quite some time. Only because I do believe that internal reflects external, and that relationships that I've attracted into my life tend to reveal some wounds that I might have. And I think that can reflect back into my own relationship itself. And so I think a lot of what I live by is having that really strong relationship with self. So that could be understanding your limitations, just having more awareness, seeing where these wounds come from, whether in this life or in past lives or future lives. I just did a past life regression training. So I'm all about tuning into the past lives right now. But I believe that there's just so much to explore when it comes to the relationship of self, but most of all, because the relationship that you have with yourself is beyond any relationship that you can have with another, meaning that you have the relationship with yourself throughout your entire lifetime, this lifetime or any other lifetime. And that's why I feel like it's the most important relationship that you can cultivate.
Yeah, but to add on to that, it goes into the whole thing about exactly what you're saying, but you also can really start to define what you want and what you need and what your boundaries and limits are. Because before I was able to speak up for myself, I didn't know anything about boundaries. And before I was like, okay, I'll just let everyone call me whenever they want and step all over me and say what they want to say to me and take like a lot of crud. And now I'm just like, you know what? I'm not responding to that because that's just, I can't even like, okay, like you won the argument. Congratulations. But it's also knowing that a lot of what people say, they just say to hurt, and it's just them deflecting how they feel about themselves and projecting onto you.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely have received that too. And that's the understanding of knowing where that's coming from. And I think because when you're kind of put in a position of just being more visible, you'll get people coming at you from different directions. And for me, just understanding that a lot of the, I think, more negative things that can come your way is often a reflection of how they're feeling about themselves or just taking it out on someone that has no direct relationship with them. And I think that has a lot to do with your relationship to self. And that's why I feel like the biggest transformation that this planet could have is just a more up-leveling of your own awareness of yourself and how you stand in relation to other people, so that you're not spreading hate or unsolicited negative comments. And likewise, it can be hurtful when you receive comments like that, but there's also a lot of positive comments too. And I think it's been a learning for me to concentrate more on the positivity than the negative, because that can stick more.
Well, I think that with social media nowadays, people can hide behind their computers or devices and say whatever they want to say to people without no repercussion. Back in the day, half the stuff people say to us online or half of the emails that we get in like the 1990s, if we were to say that, we would have to say it to someone's face or call them or send them a letter and we'd get punched. You know what I mean? So just saying that there is sort of like this kind of, that's just what people do on these platforms. Like if they're in a bad mood, they just take it out on someone. And that's not fair because we're not harming people. We're just spreading light and love. I always say check yourself before you wreck yourself. So think about how you would feel before you say something to someone else. Or people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. It's just no one's perfect. Like don't come at people. No one's perfect, and everyone needs to realize that everyone's doing the best that they can. Sometimes, like, there are times where you have to deal with an issue on the internet and you have to address something, but I always am the type of person where I discuss it with the person privately, just because I think that it gives fuel to the fire, and people love to jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah, and if there was that golden rule in place of just before you send out a hateful comment, like how would you like to be treated? Which in some cases, I think some of us might have some really negative things that we're saying to ourselves. And that's why I feel like we can come back to a loving, unconditional love type of place. I would love to hear from you in terms of like, what are some of the most common questions that you get about love in astrology?
The couple of things that I get about love and questions I get, I do a lot of horary charts, which is a different type of astrology, different rules. So the first thing is that I always argue with people who think that they know everything. And I'm like, horary is like a very old, it's like ancient astrology. And I've been doing it for so many years, even there's room for me to study, I'm still studying it. So the one thing I get for a horary chart is, are they cheating? And there are different types of cheating according to astrology. I always get, will this relationship work out? How do they feel about me? And I always say the one question that no one ever asks is, will I be happy in this relationship? Because you can see that too. And I'm always like wondering why people never ask if they'll be happy. Because think about it, your happiness is something that matters the most.
That's so true.
Psychology 101 by Lisa Stardust. So I've noticed that a lot in the years that I've been doing astrology and tarot and like reading for people, reading for myself, even getting readings, is that I don't even ask if I'll be happy. And I think that's a really important thing, because part of being a fulfilled person is being happy. Will this relationship make me happy? Is this a good partner for me? Are we compatible? No one wants to know that. They just want to know like what the other person's doing. But I think that's part of this social media type of world that we live in, where we have so much access to people all the time, and the 15 minutes that we don't have access to them, when they're not responding, we begin to kind of flip out. They haven't responded in 15 minutes. Oh my God. It's like back in the day, people used to not respond for days. Or what, before even they had answering machines, you would call someone, their line would be busy. You'd have to wait to talk to them. Or you would just go to their apartment or house or write a letter.
Yeah. And I know I've been talking a lot about relationship to self, but also I think that speaks to the capacity to be alone and just to enjoy your own company and solitude. Because I think because we have all this access to direct access to not just our like inner circle, so like friends, family, whoever belongs there, but also extended circle and also other people that we don't even know that we constantly might compare ourselves to. And I think that speaks to what we might feel in social media, just like this constant comparison with our lives compared to another. But I also think that speaks to, like you mentioned earlier on, that we really don't know what's going on behind closed doors. So sending compassion to ourselves in the moment of whatever discomfort we're feeling when we are in that mode of comparison, but also for that other person, because we have no idea what struggles they might be going through.
But also it talks about like our own boundaries and other people's boundaries too. Because many years ago, if someone didn't respond right away, I'd be like, oh my God, what are they doing? They hate me. But I think that now I'm sort of just like, I'm going to take my time in responding to people because I want to be present for the conversation, or I have a lot going on, or maybe I want to be alone. So I think that talks about self-love too. It's about knowing what your limits are.
Absolutely.
When the clock hits 8 o'clock, I'm done for the day working. I don't care who's emailed me, or when the clock hits like 4:30 on a Friday, I don't respond to emails. I don't respond to anything. And I think that's something really important. It's just setting boundaries for yourself, because then you know your limits and you can be more present in your own life and you can love yourself more. Then you can take a walk outside without having to worry about responding to your boss or your friend. And I think that's important. And you can also be present with people. So this sort of modern way that we're all thinking now, that we need to just take a step back and chill. And don't forget, Venus is a chill planet. So it likes to relax and unwind. It doesn't like to be pressured. It likes to have a good time. I would say the most important thing is to not be so consumed with what other people are doing too, but to be consumed with what you're doing for yourself.
Yeah, I feel like for me as well, boundaries was a huge lesson in learning to love myself. And I think because of my cultural conditioning, there was a lot of sacrifice of oneself and one's identity that I went through as a child to then get me to a place of really valuing myself as an individual and really coming to understand what my boundaries were and even what my needs are. And I think by having your boundaries crossed, you then learn what they even are. But even acknowledging what your needs are, I think, are a huge way of just understanding how to love oneself and speaking up for your needs and understanding what it is to be loved and how you like to be loved and how you like to have love be communicated to you. Because I think a huge part of love is just communication. And I think that can be a huge reason why there's a lot of misunderstanding when it can come to love, because different needs are not being met by different people. And I feel like when it comes to love, that's also about choosing oneself and the evolution of love and the evolution of how you relate to somebody else. Because who I was, let's say 5 years ago, my needs were different then than my needs now, because I've changed as a person. And if you're willing to grow with somebody else and go on that journey of evolution with that other person, then you can find that your needs change as time evolves and goes along.
But I always say everyone has to grow individually and as a couple. So I always say it's great to have an outside identity and also the identity that you have together. My sister and my brother-in-law just celebrated their 20th anniversary since they've been married. My sister met him when she was 18 or 19. I'm not sure. And it was her second boyfriend. They've grown in different ways, but they always find one interest that they share together. Does that make sense? They go out, they do their own thing. They go away on vacation with their groups, their friends without the other spouse, like a girl's trip or a guy's trip or whatever they do. They don't always have to be together. But I think that's really healthy too when it comes to relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. There's different types of love also. Besides romantic love, there's love for yourself, there's familial love. You can love your coworker in the way that you want to show love and affection. And I feel like the journey of love is also ever evolving and ever growing. And also I think ties to this theme of identity and like what you identify with. And so like you mentioned, your sister and brother-in-law, they have this shared hobby, it sounds like, that they have together, and that can bring them back together. And so for a lot of people, I think that can ignite love. And I think stereotypically we see love as this very fiery, passionate thing, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's this slow burning thing that sustains over time. And I think that allowing these different definitions of love coexisting with one another can be a healthy thing, because sometimes ignite kind of fiery type of love is not always sustainable. Maybe that's like what we wanted at one point in our lives, but maybe that's not what we wanted anymore as we continue to grow and evolve.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that. And I think that it's really important to basically find yourself and to find your own interests that you like to do, makes you feel really good. For me, back in the day, it was astrology when I was a teenager, and I was really into that, and crystals, and it was something that I was passionate about. And before we had Instagram and all of these social networking places, I would go on forums and talk about astrology and tarot, and having an interest like that made me feel great. And then meeting people who shared that interest there made me feel like I was part of a community and I was being seen. But also within a lot of the other relationships that I have, like my best friend, and since I was 3, she's not into astrology and tarot. So we have a shared connection of fun things that we like to do. Like we like to go to plays, we like to go to movies, we like to go to concerts. We share like those experiences together. I think that everyone can sort of find their footing too and find what works for them. And relationships, it's not one size fit all. Like don't forget, you have the chance to create the type of relationship and love that you want. That's why it's so confusing to people, because it's different for everyone. And it's interesting because Venus is a planet that naturally is in the opposite orbit of Earth around the sun. So by definition, we don't understand love. So we don't understand the planet because it's confusing to us. It's Uranus and Venus are the only 2 planets that move in the opposite orbit of Earth. It is confusing to us. Like people hate change, which is Uranus, and people can't really understand. They hate having to grow and evolve. It's a challenge for some people. And also when it comes to love, it's confusing because the planet just by definition is always opposite of, we're always trying to understand it. So sometimes I always say that maybe instead of trying to understand things as well, we can just do what feels right to us and really just do what makes us happy. If it lasts forever, if it lasts for a season, if it lasts for a week, you did what you wanted to do, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's very wise to approach love in that way of just also feeling into that it doesn't always have to make sense. It doesn't always have to amount to something.
There's no logic to anything. I mean, I always say sometimes, like, people, you're confused by your feeling. Like, I'm confused sometimes with the people. There are people who I have specific relationships with who I fight with them all the time. And then I'm like, oh, but I love them. I don't know why, but I care about them. I have a soft spot for them. It's like you can't understand why you feel the way that you feel. Sometimes it's just chemistry.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have your love deck here.
Our auras align.
The auras align. And so I'd love to talk about your deck and your inspiration for the love deck and what your process was in creating it.
Sure. So when I created the love deck, I wanted to basically create something that people can manifest self-love. And like I said before, I believe that true love starts with the self. And a lot of my clients at that time, and as always, were curious about relationships. So I thought, why don't we make a deck where we can discuss how we can do affirmations to love ourselves, what crystals we can pick that will basically bring love to us or self-love to us, or what journal prompts we can write that will help us basically understand our emotions and sentiments. And I went through all the planets in love, all the signs in love in the deck. So it would have like an astrological understanding. Also, there were some magic spells in there, how to catch a new love, how to build confidence, how to cut the cord or let go of people. And for me, it was a journey that I was doing within myself too, because I was evolving and changing and I was growing into being a more confident person. And there's a phrase that's on a piece of jewelry by the jewelry company Catbird that says radiant being worthy of love. So to me, when I was writing this deck, that's what kind of spoke to me, that we're all radiant beings worthy of love.
I love that. Oh my God. That's going to be my mantra today.
Yeah, I think it should be everyone's mantra.
Yes, every day, actually. Yeah.
That really was, I think, like what kind of sparked a lot within myself.
I love that. So we are going to do a collective card reading. I'm going to shuffle and pull a card, and Lisa is going to explain what it means. So, okay.
Drum roll.
Drum roll. Ooh. Okay, I got love spells. Spark chemistry.
Spark chemistry. So you can read the beginning prompts of that since you have it in your direct peripheral.
Sure. Absolutely. Spark chemistry. This spell can be performed to enhance sexual chemistry. Set the mood in your bedroom by dimming the lights, lighting some candles, and putting on soft music. Invite your partner or love interest into the room and sit across from one another on the bed. Spend a few minutes gazing silently into each other's eyes, meditating on your connection. Then write down something you desire from your partner on a piece of wish or parchment paper and have them do the same. When you're ready, exchange your paper with your partner. See where the moment takes you. After, you can burn the paper in a cauldron by practicing fire safety tips.
Fire safety tips, very important there.
Very important. And bury the ashes in the earth or flush them down the toilet.
Now, it's interesting because part of the spell that I created, the beginning part, was my dad's girlfriend at the time. She was into Tantra and she was an acupuncturist and she was a Tantra healer. My dad and her did a video for her website and they're staring into each other's eyes. And yes, it's kind of weird to see your dad and his girlfriend doing that, but it was like, to me, wow, like that's so intimate. They're really intensely looking at each other and they're not gazing away. So to me, I think that, and also from cuddle parties that I would, in New York City that they have, where you cuddle with strangers or even your partners, and it's just to increase intimacy. I think there's something intimate about connecting with someone on a physical level and gazing into their eyes and seeing the eyes are the windows to the soul. And to really have that deep connection is really beautiful. Also, if you're doing sex magic, this is part of the sex magic spell. You want to be at one with your partner because energy that they have can give you energy. It can create excitement within yourself. And that's what we're here for. Energy feeds off of energy. Your souls are connecting. Your auras are joining. You're rubbing your auras off each other. And when they say that sexually, in magic sexually, that when you have sex with someone, you're psychically connected to them until you cut the cord. There is something really powerful to that, I think. Yes. So if you're looking to connect with someone on the Friday night or on a weekday, try it. It'd be really nice to see what would happen if you try it during a full moon or a new moon, just to create more intense electric passion.
Absolutely. So yeah, make sure to check out Lisa's deck for more love spells, meditations, but also I'm seeing signs in love, crystals with love, for love, love chakras. Yeah, so there's so many goodies in here to explore your relationship to love. So last question, what is sex magic and how can one use it?
I've written a few articles in sex magic. I wrote one for Teen Vogue that you can look up. I've written a few. I wrote one for the Sex Ed podcast, which is by my good friend Liz Goldwyn, who's a sex advocate. Sex magic comes from the belief that the juices that we produce when we're orgasming, they give us power. So you can do it solo or with a partner. If you're going to drink your partner's juices, let's just say hypothetically, you're basically taking power from them and they're becoming a part of you. So also they say that when you're orgasming, it's a great way to set intentions because you're putting a lot of power behind the intention. And an orgasm is the intention is subconsciously coming into play within your mind because it's associating it with a magical release that's very enjoyable.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah, it's also the height of whatever magnetic field you're producing.
Yes, basically.
So I feel that's a really great way to attract as well. So thank you so much, Lisa, for your time today. This was so insightful, and I feel anyone listening will learn about love and themselves and sex magic and how to invoke more love into their lives.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure talking with you and connecting with you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode with Lisa Stardust. Love is always such an interesting topic, and I'm glad Lisa was able to walk us through the themes of the Lover's Tarot card, as well as her experience with the topic of love through the lens of an astrologer. As a reminder, you can win Lisa Stardust's Love deck, which has 70 cards designed to enhance your love life, promote attraction, and boost connection. There will be 3 winners, and you can enter by leaving a podcast review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, follow us on social media for the full details. Links will be in the show notes. As always, sending you so much grace today and every day. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. If you loved this episode, check out other Graced podcast episodes where we talk more about how to apply everyday magic to your everyday life. See you next time.